We are in Ukraine 100% sure that only truth can win propaganda, only facts can stop disinformation, and social media, it is a big tool for spreading democratic ideas as well as for sharing harmful ideas. Now our team works closely with policy teams of the biggest internet platforms. We are asking for the adaptation of content moderation policies for Ukrainian media and bloggers, as content Ukrainian citizens share starting from the 24th of February is quite horrific. So there are lots of cases of blocking and removing the content from news feeds. And I would say that we might need the support of our European friends to highlight war in the most suitable way, not to hide the truth. But let's move on. We have the second panel in our program. And the topic of the panel is New Digital Goals, Digital Governments of the Future. Topic is very promising. And let me invite here, guys, a minute of your attention, please. Let me invite here a moderator of the second panel, a man who is leading a digital transformation in Slovenia. Less than in 1 year, he managed to establish the new government office for digital transformation to implement 20 out of 40 ambitious measures for the digital transformation of Slovenia. The first Minister of Digital Transformation of Slovenia, Boris Andrijanič. And I would also like to invite the panelists, Moldova, Deputy Prime Minister for Digitalisation, Iurie Țurcanu, Finland, Minister of Transport and Communications, Timo Haraka, Croatia, State Secretary at the Central State Office for the Development of Digital Society, Bernard Kris, Estonia, Government Chief Information Officer, Luukas, Switzerland, Chief Digitalization at Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Benedikt Wechsler, Latvia, Deputy State Secretary of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development, responsible for digital transformation policy, Gatis Ozols. Please, colleagues, take your seats. Mark, I'm giving the floor to you. Let's change.
Thank you, Valeria, for this super kind introduction. Thank you, Mihailo, and the entire team for bringing us together today. It feels great to be among so many friends. Now, let me first tell you a story about the first call we had with Mihailo in the first week of the war, when we gathered all together to brainstorm how we can offer instant tech support to Ukraine. And at the time, we all said that you guys are our heroes, for more than one reason. The first reason is obvious, is the courage, is the audacity that you've been showing every single day of this war. And the second reason, no less important, has something to do with your presentation today. You guys are our digital heroes. You are doing many of the stuff many of us are just dreaming about. And I think your presentation and what you've been doing with the app and all the other digital services was so impressive and visionary that even our Estonian friend was left speechless. I don't think there's a greater compliment you can get in digital Europe. So now, gentlemen, we have one big problem. There's a lot of us, there's a lot to discuss, and we have Valeria, which means that we have very little time. So I'm warning you, I will be a very short-tempered and ferocious moderator of today's discussion. Now, the goal is to take in some questions from the audience as well at the end. And let's start with sharing some of the best practices that all of you have been involved with in your home countries. Now, the idea is to basically show how can best be done everything in the area of e-health, e-government, digital inclusion, and so on and so forth. And let me first challenge our Estonian friend, Luukas. Estonia, of course, as we all know, has been a forerunner when it comes to digital public services, but also when it comes to digital skilling of the entire population. So perhaps if you could share one of two very specific examples of projects that you guys are so proud of.
Thank you. The bar is set very high by what Mihailo has been telling us about this morning, and I can tell you right now, I have my Copy Ukraine plan for the next couple of years, and it's very nice because I don't have to invent anything new. But maybe two quick thoughts. The first thing that's really important is that when you're building these applications, they ultimately modify an ecosystem together. And the reason that ecosystem is important is because that lets you layer on new interesting applications. So right now we're thinking about how can we have AI agents that look through your data and basically find opportunities on behalf of citizens. You know, whether that's a public benefit you're entitled to, or whether in the case of someone maybe who is at risk of a social problem, of a health problem, helping the government reach out to them before that turns into someone who is in the hospital, who is on social assistance. And the other thing I want to talk about is skilling. And there what's really important, of course, we all have governmental skilling initiatives, is how we bring the private sector in, not just as a corporate social responsibility initiative, but because it's in their own interests. So for instance, when we first started rolling out e-government services, we got our banks involved because they had the profit interest of closing branches. And they realized the only way they could close branches was if the old ladies who, you know, were the last people to want to stop, old ladies and old men, were the last people who would want to stop going to the branch. They were comfortable using the online banking. Then they could close a bank branch effectively. So they had a very strong commercial cost interest to do so. And that type of PPP has been very helpful all along.
Short and concise, thanks so much. Now, Gatis, Latvia has been doing great stuff in the area of digital infrastructure. You've laid out an ambitious plan of affordable and widespread broadband internet. You've also been incredibly good when it comes to the digital transformation of the judiciary, starting, of course, with notary services. Please share a bit more about that.
Yeah, I can share maybe about the notary services. What we see when we develop a digital government, that at some point we are limited by the things that the government is digitized, but then how about all the other society services, how we use the trust digital services in all other applications in our like a civil or business environment. So for this reason, we take as one of the strategic goals is to equip every citizen with secure signing and the identification tools so they can be used also in private sector. And currently we have managed that all the citizens will be equipped, and also it is free of charge for everyone to have this signature and digital identification. Now, what the second step we made, we also want to encourage that the private sector would accept the digital identity of the state as it accepts passports. You don't need to go bank with bank identification only. As you can use passport in the bank, you can use also a national identification. So starting from the next year, all banks will have to accept national digital identification for services. And then other thing is high trust services that we want to enable. And one of such services is digital notaries that we launched some years ago, and it allows to completely have all the notarial kind of procedures to make online. You can meet with your notary on the online kind of space. Also, if you need a multi-person kind of environment, you also can do it, and you can conclude all the, whether it's selling and buying the property, whether it's to issuing some document and so on. So you can do it online, and it was very convenient for people to, especially in COVID time, when you cannot go in the present, so you can do it remotely. You can do it also when one of the persons are in the other country. So it's become some 5 times popular during the COVID time. So just one of the examples of high trust services that are not only for government but also for societal needs.
Fantastic stuff. Now, Benedikt, your home country, Switzerland, is not just the home of breathtaking nature and world-class chocolate. You guys also have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. So please explain how is digital transforming your healthcare services in terms of e-health?
Thank you very much. And maybe just also to begin with, I'm very proud that Switzerland, with our cooperation that we were since 2015, beside with you in starting the digital transformation, and so that we could contribute a little bit to be to where you are now. And we're very proud of that, and I think there's so much to learn from you. And actually, you know, it's a little bit paradox. Switzerland is always ranking first in the world innovation rankings. But in health and digitalization, as the government, we're sort of Yeah, you know. And you know, actually this morning we had our Danish colleague at a symposium who said Switzerland has the very, very best health system, but on digital you're just bad, you know. So I'm standing here in front of you and I have to say we're not good in e-health, and it's maybe because the health system is so good even in the analog.
So let me rephrase the question. What can we learn from your mistakes?
Yeah. You know, I mean, we had a referendum on the EID, which was rejected by the population in a referendum. We were not able to create the trust that they would accept this EID. So that's something we have to work on the trust. Yesterday we launched a digital trust label with a Swiss digital initiative. We have to gain more trust in our population for digital services. You have less maybe of the problem because you're in a crisis situation, you don't have the choice, and maybe you know that the existing infrastructure is not as good. So the delta is huge if you have a good digital service. So I think that's important. And also, what's very important is, well, I have one success story. It's the tracing app of COVID-19. We have the world's best algorithm mathematicians at EPFL, Lausanne, and other universities, and they were actually able to convince Google and Apple on their own, because they knew people who do these algorithms at Apple and Google. Hey, you know, you have to change this, otherwise we cannot get this tracing app. And actually, you know, even the big tech, and the big tech, they said, okay, well, we can fix that. So, you know, we have to be, it's a little bit of an arms race. We have to be on the same level. And then, you know, if we can show them, hey, you're wrong, then they will change. So that was my little success story.
Perfect. So luckily for you, we have someone who knows a thing or two about digital ID. And it's our friend Bernard from Croatia. They've done an amazing job when it comes to EID, but also when it comes to digital schooling. So Bernard, the floor is yours.
Thank you. At the beginning, I want to thank my colleagues from Ukraine for inviting me for this panel. Unfortunately, Ukraine is going through a difficult period of war today. I can compare this with my homeland Croatia and remember 30 years back when 1/3 of the territory of Croatia was occupied, when the aggression of the neighboring country was carried out on Croatia, and when the Croatian people suffered like the Ukrainian people suffered today. I remember very well all the events and the agony of the people suffering. So I can say that if anyone understands the Ukrainian people today, it must be the Croatian people. After what Croatia had experienced, I was convinced that it was impossible for the war in Europe to ever happen again. Unfortunately, it is happening. My message to the Ukrainian people is that it was worth fighting and liberating your country. It was worth learning and creating, and it didn't destroy us. It just slowed us down, and we never surrendered like Ukraine didn't and won't. During the war in Croatia, I studied electrical engineering in Zagreb. We had classes and took exams at the shelter because of frequent alerts. But even during war, there is life. We are aware that this evil will not last forever, and that it is necessary to rebuild one's own country after all. It is necessary to develop new technologies, learn, educate young people, and allow them to create. For example, this year we are making 30 years since Croatia was connected on the internet. This was during the war in Croatia. After that, the Croatian Academic and Research Network institution who connected Croatia on internet was founded as a carrier of digital development. CARNET, Croatian Academic and Research Network, is today the bearer of important digitalization project in the field of Ministry of Science and Education. The e-school project, led by Carnet, won the European Commission Regional Stars Award in 2020 for best project in the category of skills and education for digital Europe, and UNESCO named Carnet e-school pilot project one of the 12 best projects in the world in the field of ICT implementation in education for 2017. At the time of pandemic, digitalization and the e-school project enabled distance schools, so that first 3 classes of primary school had classes via TV programs and others via the internet. The software for the support of broadcasting of instructions through television was created by the Croatian company. Thank you.
Very impressive. Thank you so much for sharing your wartime experience. I'm sure that Ukraine will come out of this tragedy victorious, and hopefully we'll have the next DIA summit in Kiev, and that's what we're very, very excited about. Now, Timo, when it comes to Finland, I don't really know where to start. You guys are good at everything. You've been consistently ranked #1 or #2 on the European Digital Index, but what really impressed me when I was visiting you a couple of weeks ago was the quality and the, I would say, customer experience of your public digital services. They're even better than the best and the most popular digital apps out there. How do you guys do that?
Thank you very much, Mark, and let me say I'm just so honored to be here with the leadership of what I think Mihailo is writing a whole new chapter in the history of warfare, and this is a chapter called Digital Defense, Data Defense, and even Social Media Defense. We're very, very impressed by all your efforts and very much support that. Thank you for your kind words as well. As it happens today, it's tax day. So most Finns leave their tax report today, or actually don't, because it's automated in the sense that you can go and check.
Timo, is that the reason why you fled the country?
Yes, today? That's the reason why I fled the country. And to Switzerland. With
no extradition here.
Yes, they would say that, with 3 very large suitcases. No, I could go on, but 95% of people just leave it at that. They don't even file the return, and the rest can do it electronically. And so sometimes a spearhead is needed, and the Finnish tax office of all institutions happens to be one. So when we had the government negotiations 3 years back, so they suggested not only all kinds of automation, but a whole real-time economy for the country, and not for the benefit of the authorities, but for SMEs that wouldn't need to file their own reports anymore, because they would automatically get the data from all transactions that will ever happen in a country. And likewise, you could also have a snapshot on each transaction, on each field of commerce or business in real time. So that's a great effort, and that's part of the Nordic Smart Government program, and we're hopefully getting there. And the tax office is probably the first one that will also get the data straight from blockchain as well. I'm confident that they will be there. And with our good friends Estonians, we've established a pharmacy cooperation, so you can you get the same receipts from each country, and we are inviting Croatia, I think, is going to join us in this effort as well. So yes, what is exportable is the question here, because I think part of why these services by and large are good. There's huge discrepancy though. There are areas that are still need a huge work to be developed. But I think it's because Finns have always been very much early adopters of technology. And this has obviously to do with mobile phones. And even more so, mobile phone services. I think we were the first countries to introduce a flat fee mobile data. So we're accustomed to the fact that wherever you are in the middle of the woods that you would have the internet in your phone, whereas in many countries that still is not feasible. So just a few years back we used more data in absolute numbers than Germany, and they are slightly bigger than we are. So the rest of the world is catching up. It's really good, and we shouldn't be complacent. And what we need to do is to ramp up digital skilling and to be sure that there is no digital divide, and especially invite girls and women to tech. And there are special projects that are really looking forward to this. And I would love to recommend a writer named Linda Luukas, who's written fantastic children's books for girls, Introduction to Technology, ICT, the Internet. Luukas, L-I-U-K-A-S. My girls, 12 and 9, just love her books.
Thank you, Timo. That's brilliant. Let me add one more thing. So according to a national poll in Finland, over 80% of Finnish taxpayers are very happy with paying taxes. Now, that's one of those great mysteries of our universe that the scientists are still struggling to understand. So congratulations. Now, Iurie, Moldova has gone a long way in many areas when it comes to digital transformation. But what was one of the most impressive phenomenon that I've witnessed is your incredibly vibrant startup system and how you have managed to become one of the upcoming digital stars of Europe. How did you do it?
Thank you very much, Mark. Colleagues, thank you for inviting me to talk to this panel, and let me express my admiration and gratitude to Mihailo and his wonderful team. And again, I will reemphasize what my previous colleagues said, that they are standing now not only for Ukraine, they are standing for all of us, for values, and for everything human being can consider the most appropriate to them. So yes, our journey is started back in 2010, when we started to think about more systemic approach to digital governance. We developed a bunch of microservices which assembled together. They formed an ecosystem which proven to be very efficient during these challenging times, because based on that infrastructure we succeed to build rapidly digital solutions to respond to refugee crisis we had. We are the closest neighbor of Ukraine, and we are being used as a platform for most of refugees, for them traveling from Ukraine to Western countries. And by the way, for those who maybe not, they do not know, we have the largest number of refugees per capita accepted during these 3 months. So that platform is definitely something which we used to start with, but very soon we found that this movement from digitization to digitalization to digital transformation, it's a very inclusive process. So it's not the government alone who has to think about these digital transformation processes, and it's the society, it's the private sector, universities. That's why we created a platform which we named kind of convergence platform for us to discuss and to present what we do in terms of digital governance for the private sector to stay aligned with that, for the universities to generate enough capacity for us to use in public and private sector. And that's why we succeed to create that kind of trust, which we didn't have until very recently because of some of corruption and the different social problems we have had in our government. So now this trust is being cultivated through different events and through spreading this culture of participation, of co-creation in the entire country. We started small from the capital city of Moldova, from Chișinău, and moved to different regions and created kind of regional IT and technology transfer centers. And they're used as business incubators. We invite people to talk about new kind of entrepreneurship, how the state can help them, how digital values and digital goods which we are all the time publishing. They can help them to set up a business and so on and so forth. And during this work, we found them very responsive to the context. With volunteers, with that startup community, we succeed to create those platforms which helped us to react immediately to those problems. We created a platform which helped the crisis management unit to coordinate the help which comes in the country, to provide enough information to people coming into the country even before they were traversing or crossing the border. So we succeed to create that synergy in the society and to get motivated by digital and by the context at the same time. So it wasn't that easy, I have to admit, because we are coming from a society where they're very nostalgic of Soviet times, and the change of generation, it happens so slowly in that particular area, despite the fact that we didn't have any help in digital or in any other sector coming from Eastern countries and from Russia, and all of the help we had is from West. Still, this culture is being demolished, and we come up with new generation of people, more digital and more open to all our human values.
That's great to hear. And you touched upon a very important topic, namely, how can digital technologies help facilitate the integration of refugees in our societies? And I believe especially Latvia and Estonia have done a great job in this area. And perhaps Gatis, Luukas, you could share an example or two.
Yeah, currently maybe not so many examples, as we are of course taking a part of people from Ukraine, and we try to use technology also to make their life as much as better while they're in our country. And for this reason we use also all the digital tools, the digital signatures, the digital identifications that are given to people that can use then afterwards the government services digitally. And this is one of the way how we try to do. And also, of course, a lot of back office work where people are coordinating central administration, government institution, how people could be placed, how to every people can be ensured the most essential things they need for the living. So these are the way where technologies help at the moment. But when we are looking forward, we are already looking forward how to have a common kind of space with Ukraine, and how to. You already started the talks with European Union as well, Commission, on how to align our digital tools. So I think this is the future how we need to work, and that will help to common digital space.
I mean, not terribly much to add. Gatis said everything I was going to say. Yes, we
discussed this before.
Exactly. Well, Estonia, but to a much smaller extent in absolute numbers, say, than Poland, has anyone who does come as a refugee, of course, is onboarded onto the national identity ecosystem and all the services. But that is not where we should be ending up as a goal. Where we should be ending up as a goal is that when this war is won, when we no longer have millions of refugees, but we have millions of Ukrainians who have one foot in Ukraine, but also have friends, have economic relations, are starting businesses that cross the border between Ukraine and the EU, that we start making this European future for Ukraine a practical reality long before Ukraine formally becomes an EU member. And so this means Ukrainian EIDs working across the EU, Ukrainian government data, everything from medical certifications for doctors to education records, moving easily into all of our countries, and vice versa. Because I know there are going to be a lot of Estonians who want to be working in Ukraine, who want to be starting businesses in Ukraine, who want to go on vacation in Ukraine. And of course, we also want to make sure that our digital documents and our data works in Ukraine. So it's a question of both directions. And I think the interesting question is not how do we deal with refugees and onboard them, but how do we deal with the post-refugee situation?
Brilliant. Benedikt, please.
May I just add, you Ukrainians, you're fighting now, as has been said, the first digital and also, analog war both. And, looking back one of the most noble humanitarian organizations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, has been born in a battlefield because of the atrocities that he was witnessing, And now I think the great challenge will be, how can we find the rules and institutions to face this new reality with the humanitarian principles, and also helping afterwards the victims and refugees in Geneva with the UNHCR, the refugee organization. I think that's going to be one of the most important also questions for the future when we talk about initiatives for digital peace, because that's now what there are new answers being needed.
Thank you. That was a wonderful intervention. What we touched upon before, and I think is absolutely essential, is digital inclusion. How do we bridge the digital divide that has grown even greater during the pandemic? And here, of course, it's not just the question of the older generations, but it's also the question, how do we basically teach young generations to act responsibly and safely on the internet? Plus, how do we get them excited about STEM and the IT professions that are so needed today? And I think Estonia has a great example of how do we get young people excited about the professions of the future, namely IT. Please tell us more about it.
Well, so we certainly we put a lot of effort into having IT education be part of the curriculum in schools, and some of that is it's fun stuff. It's learning to play with robots and really breaking down the boundary between what is play and what is learning. Some of that is the more boring stuff of having proper instruction in mathematics in a way that sort of feeds into coding. But it's not just a question of young people. I think we need to get past this idea that the digital divide, that old people can't play in the digital space. And sometimes actually the difficulties we have is it's onboarding the youngest people who are in the Facebook and the Instagram digital ecosystem, but not in the government ecosystem, into the governmental ecosystem. So the digital gaps come at you from both sides. But I think play, in a sense, is really important, is that we have to get rid of this idea that doing digital is hard. And the other challenge is that we shouldn't imagine that digital skills are only technical skills, because they're also managerial skills, project management skills, design skills. So one of the hardest skilling initiatives that we think about a lot is how we skill our civil servants. And it's not teaching them how to write code, it's teaching them agile project management, it's teaching them new approaches to budgeting, it's teaching them how to go and do user interaction design. And that, teaching a bunch of 45-year-old civil servants, much harder than teaching kids. No offense to...
I can attest to that. Timo, it's going to be fine. You'll talk afterwards.
He's a politician. Politicians faster.
So, actually, when I'm listening to this incredible best practices from various areas, one can say that we all know what to do. The question is, how do we do it? How do we build the government's ability to implement complex projects and manage change? And this is something Luukas beautifully referred to. Now, today, it's really hard to compete with the private sector when it comes to top IT talent. Yet Finland, Timo, and I'm putting you on the spot again, has been managed to go against all odds. So how are you able to attract top talent to make sure that your cutting-edge government solutions are 2 steps ahead of the rest?
Well, thank you for this interpretation. Well, I certainly hope, and that is, I think, critical for all of us who want to enhance government operations in peacetime to attract talent from the private sector. I think what my ministry is doing, and this I'm talking about my predecessors, not myself, is that we work very closely with the private-public cooperation with companies, and actually the whole emergency supply system that we have in place in Finland that has been proven to be very important in these times of crisis, is preparedness we've had for 78 years. Is also very much a public-private enterprise. So the private companies are paying to be in this defense or security network. So that might be one reason why it's not such a huge jump to go from government to private sector and back. At least I hope that's the case. But we'll see, because for the first time we've been able to add resources to our cybersecurity efforts throughout the government horizontally. I'm very glad, because I'm responsible of the cybersecurity issues. And you can imagine my horror when I was sitting next to the Prime Minister in the Finnish Parliament, and Ukrainian president was supposed to appear on the screen, and he didn't. It took a while, so I thought, well, what kind of cyber attack is on place when Zelensky wasn't on the screen and I'm sitting next to the Prime Minister? I'm responsible for this. But happily, he came to screen a bit later.
Timo, you should buy Starlink. It's much better internet connection than what you have right now.
Right.
Thanks so much for this. And dear friends, I'm opening the floor now for your questions and comments. So who's going to be first? Do I need to select a volunteer? Please, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks. I'm Peter Misek from Access Now. Yeah, I think with this panel and the last couple and the presentation, we saw just a lot of enthusiasm for digitization, digital transformation, digital systems, and I think coming from a place where we see how a lot of these systems go wrong, even when they're entirely inclusive, there can be a lot of negative repercussions from just a complete reliance and dependence on digital systems, whether it's in social services or outright abuse and malicious use of exclusions. And I just want to say, as you mentioned, I think Luukas, you're going to want these to be interoperable with Europe and the EU. How are these going to be meeting those high data protection standards? Are those being built in from the start, with an anticipation that there will be integration with those, increasingly high standards on content and privacy set in the EU? Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment. Does anyone have a question? Please go ahead. Oh, it's not you. You're just holding the microphone. No problem. So let me ask you one thing about, there's a lot of talk about Web 3.0, about the emerging technologies like the Metaverse and also blockchain, which has been with us for a very long time. Now, how do you imagine the digital government 10 years from now? What role will these new technologies play in how governments do their businesses? And maybe Benedikt?
Well, being Switzerland one of the hotspots of blockchain, I think we're really convinced that blockchain is going to be part of the future infrastructure because it creates more trust and more security and will bring down the environmental costs and energies of blockchain and everything. So I think that's certainly good. And also Metaverse, I mean, that's my Finnish colleague on gaming. I mean, gaming, 1/3 of the world's population is gaming. My kids, they're all gaming. And it's completely natural. And that's going to be part of life. And it has to be also part of how the government is dealing with people who are gaming. So that are my two things that I think when I'll be once retired on an alpine farm, I'll be seeing, hopefully.
So I must say that it's all about gamification also in the educational sector. How do we make, really important knowledge sexy for the kids? Timo, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I've started to get to know a bit about Web 3.0, tokenization, crypto, and so forth. There's this lady on the second row who's smiling because she's been my Sherpa on this journey, and it's absolutely fascinating. And the other thing that's fascinating in a negative sense is that all the great legislation and regulation that we've just produced from the European Union does scarcely mention Web 3.0, has really little to say about Metaverse. And we really need to address these issues. How do we tax tokens, for instance? What kind of regulations do we have in place for transactions and actions that happen in the metaverse is going to be a really, really difficult task and something that we need to embark on right now.
I trust your tax authority to deal with this issue very competently. Luukas.
I do want to address the question from Access Now because it is a super important question. Of course, we could have a whole separate panel on data protection and how we approach all of that. But I think one of the things that's really important is two things have to happen. Individuals do need to be empowered to have control over what's going on, and not just in a technical sense, but a real functional sense that they understand what's happening to their data, they have meaningful control over what's being done with it. And the second side, though, is that that isn't an excuse for government, when it's running a service, giving up control, giving up some responsibility for that duty to make sure that the ecosystem actually protects people. And I think for me, at least, that is an inherent part of running a good service, that you think about the data protection, you think about what's happening with the data. It's part of ultimately you being user-centric. On Web3, the fascinating, exciting thing is that it is the horizontal point of Web3 infrastructures is that we have infrastructures that are no longer specific to a single country, that in a sense are run more broadly in the network. And we're still figuring out how that works, and we're figuring out some of the shortfalls, because sometimes something that seems decentralized isn't so fully decentralized. But I think the promise as we go on is that a large part of the infrastructure that today each of us has to run on our own can partially exist as a common mutual infrastructure, and that makes all of our lives easier. I mean, my mission as government CIO is ultimately, while I want many cool applications to be built in Estonia and interesting technology to come from Estonia, I don't want all the Estonian applications and technology to be built in Estonia. I want the world of how we build our digital government to be as global, as market-driven, as open as the world of building fintechs or the world of building, health applications is, which doesn't mean we don't care about security, we don't care about sovereignty and provenance, but a Latvian application, a Ukrainian application is as at home in Estonia as an Estonian one. And I think that some of the developments happening in the Web3 world will really help us get there, where we have a much more global GovTech ecosystem.
So what public service would you offer first in the metaverse?
Clearly, we already agreed it's taxation. Our tax system,
That's the wrong place to start, my friend.
Our e-tax system has a 90%.
Use your imagination.
90% user approval rating. No, but seriously, if you want to legally do stuff in the crypto world, right, and you want that to relate back to the world of companies that are registered in the company registry, the world of banking and so on, that interface, taxation, company registration, if you've got tokenization of assets, can you actually protect that asset claim in the physical world? It's super important. And it's really boring, but it's the kind of thing where if we build that infrastructure, that's where we help the private sector doing the really cool things in the tokenized and the crypto world.
Agreed.
And I see that your Sherpa's nodding, so.
Yeah, I just want to share that a bit philosophical maybe aspect that I believe that the role of the government has to change from the service provider to kind of success manager of citizens' well-being. So all the government transactions, they would be seamless and they would happen anyway. But the government's role, it would be to see how to make serve as a success manager for the citizens' well-being. And for this reason, it consists not only of government, but also private sector, NGO, civic activities. So we need to build some this ecosystem where all those players can play together in a secure, trusted environment. It's like we are building some, not the bridges between like a private sector, between big tech companies, between, I don't know, some civic activities, but we are kind of making a kind of trusted garden where we can play all together in a trusted manner. And I think this is the role of the government, to create such an environment that people can trust, but we can build together services, the private sector, the public sector across boundaries. So it's for the future. And it goes together with the metaverse. It's also would be kind of universal across countries.
Sounds great. Iurie, maybe a couple of your thoughts on Web 3.0 and the future of digital government.
Yes, I completely agree with my colleagues. I think the digital government as we know it today will be completely changed. In terms of infrastructure, it will be the major infrastructure providers like Starlink, like other providers. They will be providing us ubiquitous internet connection, ubiquitous access to data, to services. I think the future citizen of our digital nations will be a free man, a free citizen, a free human who will not be tied to any bureaucracy, to any geography. I have to admit that we'll leave everyone to live their lives without being very intrusive as we sometimes are today. And I very much hope that the new future will be work-less, will be peaceful.
That's
Thank
the
you.
idea. Bernard, maybe a couple of final thoughts?
Yes, very shortly, development of the digital society, new services, new technologies are becoming the main tool for the development of the economy and society, where they must always serve human and man in the focus of events.
Thank you very
My
much.
conclusion.
And we have a question. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Max. I'm an entrepreneur from Ukraine, and my question is about the regulation in the metaverse in the Web3 space. So a lot of people already saying about metaverse happened in Web 2.0 already with social networks. For instance, like I'm spending 80% of my time in the not social medias, but working chats and so on and so forth. So like I live in a virtual world. And government's just starting to enter this digital world right now. How do you think, what is the problem right now for creating the digital central bank in the digital world, which will be the main kind of central bank for all the crypto exchanges, for all the crypto world, and will regulate this? And the same kind of, if you ever heard about the digital citizenships, yeah, why the government can't enter first and start creating the metaverse digital citizenships, elections, voting, have a part of the parliament, like kind of, if you have, like in Ukraine, you have 450 people in the parliament, 50 of them can be elected like in the metaverse or something like this. So my two questions is, first one is the digital central bank, and second is elections in the government in the metaverse. Thanks.
So how do we centralize and standardize something that's decentralized and scattered across? Who would like to answer the question? Luukas?
CBDCs, I think, are coming, but there's a big discussion on how do they crowd out the interesting crypto stuff. You know, I think probably there's a boring economist answer on how they provide some stability, but they don't necessarily directly end up being used for everything. Government in the metaverse, you know, if we get into this discussion on AI and what humanity means, we come back to this very basic concept that we do have to differentiate between human beings and whatever algorithms are going on in this kind of wetware versus the algorithms running in a machine. So could we have democratic debate in the metaverse? Maybe, but I don't think we change the definition of who is a stakeholder in a democratic polity through the metaverse. Now, I think we might be layering different kinds of more global polities and more local polities, but I guess all of us as representatives of nation states kind of have to say, we think there's a lot of legacy there to protect, and the basic foundation of a democratic nation state is one person, you know, adult for now, but maybe we expand this, you know, to younger ages, one person, biologically a human being, one vote. If that works in the metaverse and we transfer that to the metaverse, you know, good EID, we can hold the parliamentary discussions and then metaverse have the votes there, but it's still going to be one biological person with this weird historical construct of citizenship, you know, one vote for the nation state. So maybe we're conservative. We have to be conservative because of our jobs.
Of course, you come from the government. Now, Valeria is still smiling, which is a good sign. And it also means that we have time for one more question. Please.
Thank you so much. So we watched this video that Minister Fedorov presented, the Vision 2030, and obviously all of us want to see a Ukraine after Russian aggression is defeated. What role do you see digitalization playing in renewing, revitalizing, rebuilding a new Ukraine?
Madam, that's a big question. So, Timo, I see you're anxious to respond, but please be brief.
I thought that you would want to answer for once. But yes, it's obviously a huge question and way beyond us, I guess. But I think Luukas took up a really important point when you were looking beyond the end of atrocities, that Ukraine and EU need to be integrated in real personal business transactions and relationships, and we need to work towards it. President Zelensky gave us Finns a special task, which we are honored to fulfill, to be helping to build the school system, which obviously can benefit a lot of digitalization as well, and we are honored to take up the task.
Brilliant. Gatis.
Yeah, maybe after watching today's presentation, fantastic, I see that it's a chance, an opportunity digital gives that you can dream a new world at the moment, and you can have all the resources you need to build it. You don't need to be binded by some legacy things. You can do it as you want. And I think at the energy level that you have already at the moment, you can do a lot of things. So use this time that you have such energy. We did it some years ago. We started digital. We think, okay, we are like very modern, and now we are past already years, and now we see, okay, now we see Mika's presentation. It's completely different time, and it's different. It's starting new era. So use this time, I think, and digital give the opportunities that you are not binded to only your country. Globally, everyone can build, help to build Ukraine.
Maybe if I can add a point, it's a bit awkward maybe because as Switzerland we're not a member of the European Union, but when you look at the foundation of the European Union, it was a peace project. And back then the major cause of war was coal and steel. So they reunited coal and steel. That was the basic of the European Union. Now I think if we manage after this war that we can make a digital peace with all the learnings and digital, it's the present, it's the future, it's data. If we can make sure that data is good for the world, it's good for peace, I think then it's a legacy, like the European Union managed to get to better organize peace after the Second World War. Hopefully then the digital could be the tool to make a good lasting peace after this horrible war.
Thank you very much. This has been super inspiring. I think one thing is for sure, Ukraine, Mikhailo, Valeria, you can always count on us to help you on the path of digital transformation, although I have a feeling you guys could help us a big time with our digital transformation, since you seem to be 2 or 3 steps ahead. But in any case, we're not going anywhere. And let me in the end repeat the famous line from Casablanca. I think this is a beginning of a beautiful friendship. Thank you for your example. Thank you for your effort. Thank you, guys, for a wonderful discussion. And, of course, Slava Ukraini.